Welcome everybody to Mud Flood was Armageddon. The Mud Flood was the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. I'm talking like a Scottish right guy. At least I'm trying to anyway. Right. Well, let's get right into it. Welcome everybody. Hopefully RJ will pop in. We don't know. He's a busy family man. Hey, consider that done. I am with them all the way on the fair use disclaimer and everything that it allows me to do to practice my free speech and all of that. As long as you comply in a certain way. I got other pictures. Better. Did you see that? You know that? Yesterday, a cyber truck crashed into the Trump building. This is a picture of it, kinda. It's a picture that I made. But it's basically that picture. Weird. I don't know. Is that a face? I don't, people see different things. I think it's weird. It wasn't like it was fun. I find myself doing things, it's like, so I did this. I said here, imagine a sovereign country not being able to do what its people want with a crop it brought to the world. It's talking about Mexico and corn. The United States and Canada seems like they want to force Mexico to import genetically modified food. And some people will go, well, Mexico elected a Jewish woman, so they deserve genetically modified corn. If they don't buy our corn, what's wrong with them? A lot of confusion in the world. We're going to get into, look at this. We're going to look at this video that just blew me away. Once again, the UBTV, he's just out to blow everybody's mind. So they drew these up early in the late 1700s and go, here's how the Freemasons imported the slaves. Problem is, this is nothing like a ship that would float and hold that many people. He's got an explanation for it. He said that these things never existed. There's no proof that there was ever a boat full of people like that. And there's a lot of things going on here that I guess they're not to scale. That to expect the people to be like that for 3 months or even 3 weeks is impossible. Not that there were not many atrocities. Apparently, this cannon is as long as the boat is high that floats, because, this is the rudder and it's the bottom that floats on that. So they were just spitballing. They'd never even seen it. And he had them. And somehow that Haitian hoax still, they got him convinced that they can know yourself and know God. That's what that Greek thought. That's what the Lord has shown me. Thank you. That the Greek idea of know thyself, and was that Socrates, or he picked it up from Plato, and then all of the David Humes and everybody left from the Renaissance in France, they all said, they're so smart. We got to be like the Greek. How many imitations do you want today? How many different dialects? I have a few. It is therefore a question of a concordance between the bottom and the top, between the inside and the out, between the microcosm and the macrocosm between man and God, let us recall that according to the book of Genesis, man is made in the image of God. Well, something male and female, been made in the image of God, but according to Genesis, chapter 2, verse 5, when there was no man that could plow the ground, maybe he wasn't the right size as those made in the image of Elohim in chapter 1. Hey, no. No, we're not doing it. We're going to keep this absolutely about the Scottish Rite stuff. I am not going into the two creations right now. Not going to do it. Just stopped in really to say, hey, Sergio, what up? And you know that Oklahoma and Oklahoma City, Kenny, that was my first video was about Oklahoma City was built on top of one of the main Native American centers. I'm never going to forget that. Maybe I will. I don't know. Sometimes, how do you really know what you're going to remember and what you forget, right? On the other hand, this separation can be thought of as a mother-son struggle, which is why it is sometimes called philosophical. What? Come on. I know New Year's is busy. You got to go out and study, and somehow, I wanted to play chess all night. Instead, I did this Bible study, and I ran into the weirdest things. Like, have you ever heard of anything called philosophical? What? Come on. Where is this even from? Oh, I think this is from one of those actual Scottish Rite websites. I had never even heard that there was black work in alchemy. Black work is a risky operation. In fact, the dissolution risked leading to the loss of the essential. That is to say, of gold itself, open parentheses, the higher principle, the soul, close parentheses. Okay, so I needed a thumbnail. And I've been like on this, say like, John D, he's bad. Everybody should know how bad he is. He did the Rosicrucians and the Freemason. And so apparently, Knucklehead, I'm going to call him Knucklehead. You can call him Dr. Rudd. He thought there was some way you can purge the system of perceived demonic influences. No, Dr. Rudd. I mean, Dr. Knucklehead. Come on. Morning, Marcella. Did you see that thumbnail? That's pretty weird, huh? So let's get on to it. Here we go. I just love these things, man. When this funny guy, he never talks about God or anything, but he is all over. At least he does it in a kind of funny, appealing way, as long as you're not trying to find out about the Lord Christ.
Also in Edinburgh, where the original house, we are told.
Hey, this is that Scottish stuff. I didn't get into it, but he's in the right place for us to get more of a deeper lesson this morning.
And Gates Records. Probably. Maybe. But the mainstream narrative is forever unsure.
It's so fuzzy.
We know that they probably still have these records, and we are probably not being shown these records. We can even go to the Craig House, located at Craig House Road, also in Edinburgh, where the original house, we are told, burned down in a fire in 1544. on the dot. They have all of the documents for that. No, the Cuthbert's Church, Edinburgh, which I'm going to tie this whole thing back in, where it is located right next to the hotel that we talked about at the start of this episode, the Caledonian. And we know that that hotel.
Oh, I don't want to see the Caledonian. I want to see the tower.
Sure. And we are just getting started today. Now, we showed the obelisk, which is located at Calton Hill, right next to everything that we've shown today. And this is when we get the connection, where we get the Robert Burns Memorial.
Yeah, these are funny. He always talks about Burns and
Burns himself. Burns himself. Burns himself. Really?
That's
Is
a
this
good one.
not another fire narrative, throwing it right into his name, like we've seen with F.L. Ames or Flames?
Oh, that's a good
And
catch.
then the monument is, of course, no longer publicly accessible. And we all know this story revolves around Robert Burns. Yet the
Maybe.
name Robert is thrown in a few more times, just to make sure that the clue has been
It's
given.
definitely, it's like part of the story. And this isn't even the main tower. There's another big tower right there in the Scottish Rites.
Yet in all of the construction photos, the thing is done, as we have seen all over the world. And when we take a look at this photo, you can see the bottom of the photo is showing something in the dirt.
Yeah. Wonder what that is. Here's some other weird stuff. A little bit lagging on the internet today, huh? Hey. Quit lagging.
Why would you need all of these buildings for such a small population? You wouldn't. The previous civilization was here before. They constructed
Cool
all of
soda.
these buildings, and they needed every single one of them. Here in Boston from the sky. It's obviously a drawing and not real from 1899. But look how the city is clearly laid out. It even has land that is perfectly formed, right on the water. Here we have the Boston Public Library.
Wow, how do we get? Oh, Boston must be Scottish Rites too, I guess.
Marble, including the exterior facade and much of the interior.
I'm stretching
Located
out
in
the show so we
Copenhagen,
have
Denmark.
something to do.
The foundation stone was set by King Frederick V
Not listening to
on
other.
October 31st, 1749.
Don't
He didn't build
know.
it, and they
Lord
didn't give us
Christ.
a construction company or tell
Manual.
us how many horses brought the materials from the mysterious land.
So we know about, he's funny. So like, but he brought Edinburgh to my mind, and you know how it goes. We just kept going. I looked up this guy Schrott, Hjalmar Schrott, the Devil's Banker. This is a gaslight. This other guy knew it. Where did he say it? Yeah, this guy nailed it. Wayne, good work there, man. No mention of Rothschild, Warburg, or Nelson Rockefeller pure gaslighting. And they mentioned this guy. How Germany saved the world. Oh, this guy, he got acquitted by the Nuremberg trial. He got let off. He was only an economist. He got sucked in to be, the devil's banker. How did they do that miracle? Because he's a genius and a Freemason. And he used fiat money, the Habsburgs, Warburgs, Rockefellers, those guys, to do it the same way FDR did it, and the same way every other country did. They could borrow, and they built, and had a little risk, a war of risk, and they didn't like that Japan won, so Russia, Germany, United States, and Britain, and Australia, you were there too, ganged up on Japan and kept them from winning the World War II, and then double-crossed China, didn't pick Chiang Kai-shek, the capitalist, they picked Mao, the Red Book Mao.
He bought a huge estate in Gulen, some 80 kilometers to the north of Berlin. It was a very big house with forests all around.
There were some very important meetings held there where a lot of information would have been shared.
In the secrecy of his farm, he could meet anybody and that he could be safe, that nobody
It's just he just knew Hitler, and this genius got sucked into helping Hitler.
That made him guilty.
With fiat money.
Schacht then was acquitted by the Nuremberg court because he couldn't be proven guilty of having prepared World War II, and he was, of course, not committed in any crimes against humanity.
To explore this unusual story, we've obtained
Bankers never
exceptional
get in
authorization
trouble,
to
do they?
examine the state military archives in Russia.
Ooh, look.
These
Secret
archives, where no cameras have ever previously been allowed, hold the traces of the destiny.
I'm going to read it like an Englishman, maybe. Calculated because the Devil's Bank had planned everything, mate, and only hitch was his encounter with the man who was even the devil. But he had a sporting mustache. 1877, he gets born. What's this all about?
November 1938. Germany became the theater for a key moment in Hitler's anti-Semitic strategy.
Whoa!
On the night of the 9th of November, Germany's Jews and their homes were targeted in what became known as Kristallnacht. Schacht was stunned by this violence.
Wow. I can never forget. Was that the Havara? How do you spell that? Yeah, the Havara Agreement. Let's hit on that. This is new. This is called following that fanned flame of. Oh, it's between Nazi. Oh, it's some sort of an agreement between Nazis and Zionist. Yeah, that 1933 was pretty busy. So in 1933, it seemed like a good idea for Germany to fund the migration of Jews, to be like, hey, they're already there, man. We should build them a home. I guess it was the Nazi regime to transfer some portion of their assets. That's their fiat money mixed with the fiat money Britain was getting from the United States. That's not what this show is about. See how we got to stick on the topic. This guy joined the Dresdner Bank. Okay, he was a Freemason. Joined in 1908. Huh? Yeah, that guy. Throwing the gang signs. Oh, he got acquitted. He probably got a good job, like other people that got acquitted for Operation Paperclip. He grew out his mustache after the, Hey, we saw that one. Now, I think that's Hitler's doctor, the one that made sure he was always pumped up on goofballs or something, trying to use the drug lingo. Hi, what's up, Mohammed? Oh, this is well after the war. You see, he's going to thumbnail his. Is that a handshake right on a thumbnail? That's not how I do it. I reach out like I'm trying to bowl a strike. Gang sign. MIFO bills are what people forget about. 6-month promissory notes drawn upon dummy companies for the Nazis' Central German Bank, set up by Gang Sign Boy. And they could be discounted. They could just do whatever they want to build the Autobahns and impress the dumbasses that think, well, Germany made it. They had a great capitalist economy. National Socialist Party. Not that socialism is bad. Christians that live together in common is highly recommended in the book of Acts. MIFO, funding everything. This guy, gang sign boy. Me, F you over. This guy just kept going, man.
With education were employed for certain ranks that the uneducated would never have access to. This would soon become a generational thing. The label of black became more popularized following the expansion of the education system. Even through the course of the civil rights movement, aka the Black Power movement. And then in the late 80s, Jesse Jackson led the movement to reclassify blacks.
1989.
After 20 years of black, Jesse Jackson and some leading scholars decided.
Before that, it was colored. Then I lived through 20 years of black. And now it's been this 30 years of African American.
In the late 1980s, that it was time for the final name change to African American.
It may come as a complete shocker to you, but Jesse Jackson is a Prince Hall Freemason.
Roger Wilkins, 10 years
Down with dope, up with hope. I am somebody.
older than Jesse Jackson and the leader of the civil rights movement, one of the leaders of the civil rights movement, embraced the change to African American. In 1989, he told Isabel Wilkerson for a New York Times report, "Whenever I go to Africa, I feel like a person with a legitimate place to stand on this earth. This is the name for."
In the British colonies along the Atlantic seaboard, in Virginia in 1705, for instance, the government decrees that the child of an Indian will be known as a mulatto. That is, a person who's half white and Indian, half African and Indian will be a mulatto. Legally.
Okay, let me cut you off here because we don't want to keep you here all day. The significance of this being what? What is the lesson? What is this telling us?
Well, there are several things that are significant about it. Of course, one of them is the way that colonialism tries to develop all kinds of elaborate classification terms for different kinds of people. But that's another subject. The most significant thing here is to reveal the much greater amounts of Native American ancestry that are present within the African American population than most people realize, because they might have been misled by the use of terms like mulatto and also people of color. Colored people included Native Americans, for example, in the United States area.
Every tongue and tribe, everybody's studying this, not only the honkies like us. Here, look at Barack. They're so, what do you deck the halls with? And have and the Flintstones had some sort of a good time. They had a
million had passed through the house, up and get to 40 million by the time Curtin visited in 1992, 4 times the total figure of slaves exported from Africa overall. I remember these inflated numbers even since college, where it's like this badge of oppression Black people have with the slave trade, where it's like, hey, yeah, actually, there was 100 million Blacks and 50 million of them died in the Middle Passage. And it just seems to be like there is this tendency among certain scholars, especially Afrocentric scholars, to dramatically embellish the numbers. And it's not just Afrocentric scholars or quote unquote Black scholars. This is a common theme among white scholars to critically look at the numbers. From 1501 to 1866, an estimated 12 million slaves from Africa were sent to North America, according to the database created by scholars using shipping records and plantation registers. Of these, only 33,000 came from Goree Island.
33,000.
Of these, only 33,000 came from Goree Island.
Another
An
33.
insignificant portion of the overall.
Oh man, can we believe
database
anybody?
shows. So
The
his
Bible is
number
good to believe.
cannot be reflected in the database.
Show
Can the numbers that are even being presented in the database be verified through the records? Baby Bush. On Thursday, Obama described the visit as a very powerful moment, and that going to the site with his family helped
He
him
likes hot
truly
dogs from
appreciate the
Chicago.
magnitude of the slave trade. Obama also said that as an African American, now he is actually an African American and an African American president, the trip gave, the trip gave him even greater motivation to stand up for human rights around the world. This is what you have to deal with the Daily Mail. This is a legitimate article. We'll have to look somewhere else a little more grammatically proficient. But, this is a legit story. Now, according to several professors, one in particular at Johns Hopkins, he states that Goree has never been a major slave port, and maybe about 200 to 300 slaves per year were taken from Goree. And that doesn't necessarily mean they were shipped through that door of no return. That door of no return most likely has been propagandized for commercial purposes.
Think so?
Like I said, the slave narrative is an industry within itself.
Oh.
The House of Slaves, Door of No Return, Charlatan's Web. This is a museum and memorial to victims of the Atlantic slave trade on Goree Island off the coast of Senegal. Its museum, which was opened in just put another flapjack on the griddle. So, of course, Curtin was not popular, but...
So I guess on his show, like when they're getting fed bologna, they're getting a flapjack.
Those estimates used to be a lot higher. And then we get to this slave trade database that was recently created, which is supposed to be the most comprehensive analysis of all the slave trade vital statistics. One would think maybe his research actually played a role in them diminishing the number, because it used to be a lot higher. And he still says 9.5, and right now they're around 10.3. 12.5.
There's that slave ship stuff.
1787. The original group of mostly bankers and merchants set their sights on rallying public opinion against the slave trade. This occurred by organizing petition campaigns against both the English Parliament and the House of Commons, as well as by procuring such information and evidence as may tend to the abolition of the slave trade. The London Committee's version is 7 diagrams and has a 2,400-word accompaniment, and was presented to Parliament and the House of Commons as evidence against the slave trade. It has more statistics and depicts a realistic ship. The more the image was improved upon, it further drifted away from an accurate representation of the Brooks. The Brooks being a well-known slave ship that's popular for depicting a shipment of over 600 slaves. There are some problems with this image. It depicts 487 slaves when in actuality on the journey before the measurements were taken, there were 638 slaves on board. The following journey had 744 slaves on board. The first journey after the measurements were taken, 609 slaves were on board. None of these numbers correspond with that allowed under the law according to the tonnage of the ship, which as set by the Slave Trade Act of 1788 was 1.67 slaves per ton to a max of 207 tons burden, after which 1 slave per ton could be carried.
Well, I'm glad he knows what he's talking about, because he lost me there for a minute.
So basically all these schematics are a scheme.
Oh, okay.
The outer planking is much too thick and is not proportional to the rest of the vessel. The stowage of slaves on multiple decks contradicts the commonly practiced methods of storing water and provisions. There are no deck hatches illustrated, only small ladders, which means that the ship would have had no way to load and unload the material and provisions required.
Oh, they're really into it. I mean, I would be studying it too, especially if I was getting a false, hey, we're getting a false history of our history also. Come on.
In the second quarter of the 19th century, images of the slave ship cross sections penetrated even formal societies and respected publications. Typically, however, these images were either reduced for the publication, changed for the sensitivities of a gentler audience, and or were drafted by authors who had never been aboard a slave ship. An excellent example of this is in Robert
In
Walsh's
that category.
section of a
I'm an author and I've never been on board a slave ship. I have been on a replica of the Nina Pinta and the Santa Maria.
slave ship. Published in Walsh's Notices of Brazil in 1828, facing the title page, it is an image that conveys the tight quarters that captains were subjected. It is not proportional, and it is missing. This is where the connections really begin between Senegal and Saint-Domingue. These women, along with their French merchant or military husbands, were some of the first people to settle on the island of Saint-Domingue under the French flag. These women were the key players in establishing the Creole plantation society. On the Isle of Saint-Domingue, Black and Creole women had more power than even white women. And some even believed they held a certain power over white men.
Red-eyed lady. And then that other song where they go, you know, it's all about black magic woman.
Be all this as it may, the Frenchmen's attitude toward their own women was consistent with their sentiments back in Senegal. Quote, plantation machine. Quote, other women may have been put off coming to Saint-Domingue. In 1713, the colony's administrators informed Versailles, we need at least 150 girls, but we ask you not to take any from the bad parts of Paris. As usual, their bodies are as corrupted as their morals. They only infect the colony and are not good for reproduction. Those complaints about the morals and health of white female colonists continued in 1743 when Saint-Domingue's governor complained that France was sending women whose aptitude for reproduction is for the most part destroyed by too much use. Wow, bitch, nigga, don't bring them bitches from Paris. They guts is destroyed. This is my French accent. Listen. Do not you tell King Louis, do not send me the beaches with the
Wow.
That's
he cruising.
I want
That's not the type of girls me and my friends were fighting over in high school.
In France in 1789, Freemasonry involved less than 1% of the eligible male population. It was at least 5 times more popular in Saint-Domingue, where there were around 1,000 Freemasons and a population of roughly 20,000 white men. Not all men had the money or education to be a Freemason. James McClellan estimates that about 25% of sociologically eligible white men in Saint-Domingue were Freemasons.
What does that mean?
In France, Freemasonry was imported from England in 1725, and this pattern was duplicated in Saint-Domingue, in Bordeaux, and other French Atlantic ports. English or Irish merchants
got a really good Bible study coming up.
organized early lodges. Jamaica opened up its first Masonic lodge.
Yeah, it's so
in 17
detailed.
where his followers had established at least 2 lodges.
I
In
watched
France,
the whole thing.
Martins
It's
had founded
good, but
the Alus de Cohen order, which
I got a lot of other stuff I want to cover.
and elements of Jewish Kabbalah tradition over Scottish Rite.
I wonder if I did watch
this
the
nigga
whole
was like,
thing.
yo, you want to talk about this nigga threw everything in the pot. Christian
I don't remember
mysticism,
this.
Kabbalah, and Freemasonry. And that's
I would have said
you know,
something
that's
about
what
the
they do.
Cohens.
That's what they do. One of his leading followers, Bacon de la Chevalerie, spent much of his
That's
military
his
career in Saint-Domingue. Martins claimed his rites could bring forward angels and other spiritual beings who could guide men toward a reintegration.
They're all They're all into some weird stuff.
And seeing the future in chicken pods.
This is the type of reverse fuckery we see all the time where they're trying to say something profound and end up saying something dumb as hell. In one breath, she says that her great ancestor Tituba was an Arawak Indian. And then she goes on to say, don't you know all civilization began in Africa? That's a crazy sequence. That's a retarded sequence. Doesn't she know Arawak Indians are indigenous American and not African? And if she's saying all people came from Africa, she basically means, don't you know we all evolved from monkeys? So there are a few levels to the fuckery when it comes to breaking down the state.
Before we go on anymore, hey, remember how fun that Justin Bieber was, and all the little girls would be like screaming like he was Paul McCartney and John Lennon rolled into a little 12-year-old playing the baby, baby, baby with the P. Diddy and those guys,
which was both free from slavery and ruled by non-whites and former captives. The successful revolution was a defining moment in the history of the Atlantic world, and the revolution's effects on the institution of slavery were felt throughout the Americas. This is true. Echoes of the Haitian massacre made their way to mainland America, where whites...
Have we even seen a Phrygian cap yet?
According to the narrative.
I don't like the computer-generated
Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who some people say was a Freemason, or possibly playing Freemason, assumed the leadership role, but he also had to deal with the French. And facing what some would consider a superior army...
He's had better days.
Jean-Jacques Dessalines was eventually assassinated.
Aren't they all?
Although many historians say they won the revolution, and then I counted Cape Français or Cape Haitian. This is where the largest amount of slaves in Haiti were shipped to, according to the manifest, according to the database. This is where the largest shipment came into. It wasn't Port-au-Prince. It was Cape Haitian or Cape Français. Now, my estimate based off these numbers, and I went through and counted a couple of pages, but it was so many pages, I took an average of the pages and I inflated them even more. There were 130,000 between the years of 1714.
Yeah, they're all LaRoche. The red. Wrap it up, dude. That dude came out so natural for me. I didn't even have to think about it. Dude. Somebody should be saying, Starport, baby.
What's the hoax? It's called the Haitian hoax. Well, obviously, hoax number one, which is an ongoing theme throughout many of my videos, is that all Haitians did not come from Africa. Now, this should be obvious, but the fact that no Indians show up in the population statistics or the database points to a larger conspiracy to suppress information.
Hey.
Hoax number two, Haitian voodoo is African. You'll hear this topic being regurgitated by many historians, but the fact is, voodoo had been practiced on these islands long before the first Africans or Europeans.
That's because all the lost tribes that left took their lost religions with them, doing that other god, lesser god thing.
Had come.
There's only one most high God, and we know him in our physical as Lord Christ Emmanuel.
Different islands had different versions of their own voodoo.
Yuck.
With the influx of Africans, that voodoo changed to amalgamate itself with the Roman Catholic Church and Freemasonry.
That's what makes my eyes look.
But before this, the indigenous people, especially on the islands, practiced several varieties of voodoo on record, or what Angela Bassett would call
Look at that.
Necromancy.
necromancy.
I think I saw their version of a baby Jesus smoking a pipe.
Agitated by many historians. But the fact is, voodoo had been practiced on these islands long before the first Africans or Europeans had come. Different islands have different versions of their own voodoo. With the influx of Africans, that voodoo changed to amalgamate itself with the Roman Catholic Church and Freemasonry. But before this, the indigenous people, especially on the islands, practiced several varieties of voodoo on record, or what Angela Bassett would call necromancy.
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 And hoax number 3, the most significant hoax, was that the Haitian Revolution was a success.
Yo.
The word success itself implies that in this context of revolution, that the Haitians won. But did they? If you've lived long enough, you understand that winning or losing isn't necessarily black and white. Pun intended.
So I got that. You already saw the thumbnail. Here's the sites of the Scottish Free Rite Masons. Similarly, self-knowledge is at the heart of the Masonic approach. Self-knowledge. Cutting the rough stone, the plumb line represents introspection. What are you going to introspect? You have to know yourself in its esoteric sense. Initiatory traditions refer to Socrates' know thyself, particularly in its not short version, its long version. They're looking for knowledge from Trismegistus, the Emerald Tablet. I know you've heard of it. As above, so below. So a bunch of fake, wannabe, they all spread that same crap. Be a philosopher. Know yourself and you will know the universe and the gods. If you're in a Freemasonry and you're believing, hey, all your gods are equal, you got the wrong predisposition, man. Your psychology is gone crazy. You need more culture. You need to get your mind right. Know yourself. It highlights the importance of introspection. Not knowing Jesus, know yourself. And if you know yourself and you know about Jesus, does he know you? That's going to be the question. In the Greek thought, the Renaissance, what everybody needs to repent from is, if I could just know myself better, I could love myself better. No, you love yourself enough. You're to love others as you love yourself already, not as you perfect your love of yourself, then I'll love others that way. Backwards. Part 6 or something here. Here's that incest quote that I thought was weird. Right? The mother-son struggle? What the hell are they talking about? The black work is a risky operation. In fact, the dissolution risk leading to the loss of your soul. Well, then what even mess around with that kind of nonsense for? That's crazy. I mean, first there must be a separation. Right. God borns us again in a non-physical way, in a spiritual way, so that we're holy and separated. We're saints. It means you're holy and separated. You're different now. That's the dissolution. I don't know why their dissolution needs a mortification or a putrefaction as the first. So they've already lost me here. No comprehende, but they did say some crazy BS, man. Here's what they kind of go with here. It is the conditioned life, the ego individual, Freudian, the unawakened being, prisoner of itself. You got to focus on yourself, and then you can help others. Through a fixation of Mercury, Saturn also fixes sulfur. Okay. The higher principle then, okay, also finds itself caught up in the individuality of your introspective in a determined body. You've got, oh, huh? So anyway, they don't talk much about this guy, huh? Kind of a pretty small thing for such a very important situation. I learned about this guy from that video we were looking at. You pick up on that? His name was in a lot of that stuff they were showing on the walls. Best known for his central role in that whole Haitian movement. Of course, born around 1717 and sent on his way to go do his thing. He was a trader acting between the Caribbean. That's France, right? How come there's no links on any of this stuff? So he was pretty important. These buildings are still here that young Yen Tien was sent on his way. Go do this. And then when you're done with that, we'll have something else for you to do. This is Bordeaux. Wow. There's a lot of pictures of Bordeaux. We're not going to look at all 88. They usually show the best ones first, I think. Hey, that's the Colosseum. I thought that was supposed to be in Rome. What are they trying to pull? Hey, that looks like Venice. That looks like World War I. That looks like Venice. That looks like Bordeaux. Oh yeah. Okay. So he started this ancient and accepted Scottish Rite stuff. There you go. There's your first double-headed eagle. No, it's not. The double-headed eagles everywhere. From Polynesia. Oops, my bad. That looked Polynesian. It's from Iran. This one is from Anatolia in Turkey. That's where the 7 churches of Revelation, wherever that is, India. Anybody know anything about the Paleo-Lagos dynasty? It looks like it's in Europe to me. Maybe it used to be Ukraine. Maybe that was Ukraine, Rum. St. George, Istanbul, Constantinople. These are the double-headed eagles that were probably, a sign of the 1,000-year reign of Emmanuel with his rod of iron, because he was dealing with wheats and tares. The tares are terrible. So, double-headed eagles is a lot of places, huh? St. George, Ivan the Terrible, just like everywhere else, taking care of You know, look at St. George killed the dragon. Oh, that can't mean Jesus. Jorge, back off. Okay, okay. You guys had enough of this. Hey, well, friggin' cap alert. Got it. There it is. 17. Oh, it's the United States double eagle. Where's our double eagle? Oh, I guess we had one that was a proposed thing. Okay. Now I'm looking for friggin' caps. There's one, maybe. Scottish Rite stuff. I've heard of that Morals and Dogma, and I know you have too. Albert Pike much? Bordeaux. Bordeaux. Wilbur Mills. I only got this guy up there just to show you how recently these things happened. Poor Wilbur Mills died in 1992, disgraced. But before his disgrace, when I was still, you know, I was out of high school, chairman of the House Ways Committee. That's way up there from the day I was born to the day I was in the high school, probably want my driver's license, man. He was the most powerful man in Washington, much like the pervert Denny Hastert from Yorkville, Illinois, that was under Reagan. Anyway, this was a different pervert. He liked white women, strippers. He was married for 58 years to the same woman. They're married side by side. But anyway, he had 2 public incidents with Fanny Fox, and that's really all it took. You got to go. So what really has changed except these racist, insane drug pushers that had all kinds of, you know, blackmail material on them from everybody? Like in North Carolina, who was it? That guy that was in the Ku Klux Klan. He wanted to be the senator in North Carolina, not Jesse Watts, the other guy before him, the Dixiecrat that ran for president. Hillary and Bill Clinton said that they were his guy. He had the Southern Manifesto. Anyway, he had to have finally got disgraced. What's this? So these are people that signed the Southern Manifesto. A lot of them. Ooh. Okay. This was when it was still white man world, and they were putting up a fight for a long time. That's a pretty important name right there. Pretty important name. I don't know some of these other people, but a lot of the world, it was hanging on to power. What is even this? Short version, please. Opposition to racial integration. Okay. So it wasn't like they were nobody. Optional, forbidden, no legislation required. They required segregation. You could not do it in the states that are green. The states that were yellow, I would imagine it was pretty segregated, but there were no laws. Okay, so let's go for some Bible study now. Welcome, everybody. Galatians 4:9. But now that you know God, or rather are known by God, the emphasis on, that's what it is about. You have to know God. You don't have to know yourself. We already knew ourselves. That's why we repented. I hope you've repented. But some people, because many are called, few are chosen, how is it that you are turning back to those weak and worthless principles? Do you wish to be enslaved by them over again? So, yeah, there's a lot of tie-ins there to our current, I'm like a slave to my adopted big brother. I want to be like him so much. Luke 23, verse 29, for behold, the days are coming when they will say, blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore and the breasts that never. That's from last night. So is this. But I'll read it anyway. Luke 24:39. Look, my hands, my feet, it is I myself. Touch me and see. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. Where's the ones about you know? Okay, here we go. 1 Corinthians 8:3. But if anyone loves God, he is known by him. Because we're supposed to love others as we love ourselves. The only implication is always that we love ourselves. And we'll eat other people if we're starving because we want to live. Unless God changes our heart and goes like, no way, I'm never going to eat another person. Matthew 16, starting at verse 24. Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly, I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. 1 John chapter 3, verse 8. That's from last night also. Luke 14:27. Whoever does not carry his cross and come after me is not able to be my disciple. That's a part of knowing, counting the cost. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? We have to lay down our own lives. Galatians 2, verse 20, Berean Standard. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me. Galatians chapter 4, verse 9, ESV. But now that you have come to know God, or rather be known by God, how can you turn back to the weak and worthless elementary principles of the world, whose slaves you want to be once more? If that sounds familiar, I might have doubled up on it. 1 John 2, 3. New KJV. Now, by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. I would advise you right now to get on board with this, because here, Matthew 3:11, I baptize you with water for repentance, but after me will come one more powerful than I, whose sandals I am not worthy to carry. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and with fire. Luke 12:49. I came to cast fire on the earth, and would that it were already kindled. That fire goes both ways. 2 Timothy 1, verse 6. For this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. Fan into you that flame of fire to help you surge into the way of pleasing the Lord. How's that? I almost said, hey, Sergio, you're going to surge your way into the fire? That's what it's all about. Now, talked a lot about the Freemasons, and then ended up with, their goal of know yourself and ponder it forever is to know God. We know our Savior, and we know that on that day of judgment, it doesn't matter if people are going to knock on the door and say, I gave a lot of money to the church. That's what they meant when they say, didn't we build great things in your name? And then there's going to be some say, I cast out demons in your name. He says, depart from me, you wretched and vile. I never knew you. They said, wait, we saw you in the streets. We ate that food that you provided. And we're into it, man. That's not taking the time to know the power and to know how he alone is creator. He is way. He is pneuma. He is Zoe, life in the Greek, so that you may have life more abundant. Then, if we're found worthy, like those people who praised God, they were worthy to suffer for his name's sake. They counted it all joy. Now, 2025 is going to be one of those years, and you know it. I know it. The American people deserve it. I know it's hard when we're getting bombed. You saw the thumbnail. But they've been aroused. They've been gaslit also. And imagine what China's going to do to us. They've had a century of shame where we kind of forced heroin on them like we did the rest of the world. I know there's 2,000 more people like me that know the truth. And we're all going to be telling the same thing. One God, one faith, one Lord. One people that are divided for one reason, to find the truth. And the truth starts with the facts that this is a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the mud flood was Armageddon. That's why me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame.